Agent's hardest puzzles still have consistency, his easiest puzzles still keep my attention, and his literacy in various genres has impressed me for years.
So diverse and incredible.
A typical agent puzzle just has an incredibly good flow in the solution path, in the sense that one deduction leads to another clue becoming highly restricted, providing a clear feedback that you're on the right track and showing you where to look next. And that's one of the reasons why agent puzzles are so fun to solve.
What I love most about Agent's puzzles is the consistently high quality of logical deductions at just the right level of difficulty for me personally. He is right up there among my favorite setters.
Agent's puzzles are smooth, hard, elegant, novel, great fun.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Setter Spotlight Season 3, or first episode, Agent. How are you doing,
Hi
Agent?
everyone, I'm doing great. Thanks a lot for having me here. It's really a honor, and thanks of course to everyone who nominated me to be here and everyone who gave good comments during this very heartwarming intro.
Well, thank you, Agent, for coming on. It's an honor to have you on the show, the podcast, the whatever you want to call it. On the screen here, we have some of the people responsible for voting for Agent here are supporters, Patreon supporters, Ko-Fi supporters, I guess some YouTube donations as well. Thanks everyone for that and for voting. Some people still haven't used their votes, and I'll show you right now what you could use your votes for. So this is the voting so far. So we have Agent, MicroStudy, Myxo, and FGEM. They're confirmed at the top, and then with 9 votes, Doomdiat and Wisteria, and then 8 votes, Ranks, James Sinclair, Full Deck, Missing a few cards, 7 votes, Analytical Ninja, Chrisonet? I don't know. Pietato, also known as Potato, or not known as Potato, sorry. 6 votes, we have Bill Murphy. Bill Murray is an actor. And 5 votes, Chameleon, 4 votes, Ambrose. And we've sort of cut off at 2 votes or below, or 3 votes or below, to sort of consolidate and hopefully get all the way up there. So we've reduced our list of almost 100 names or more to these 14 or 17 people. So thank you everyone for voting and supporting, and let's get back to Agent. Let's talk about some warm-up things. I know
Right?
KNT, someone who was supposed to speak in the intro but didn't get his submission in on time. Test KNT. He asked a question: what's your favorite book / show / movie?
Yeah, KNT with the hard questions already. Honestly, I feel like it's such really hard to pick only one. But I think if I had to really pick one, I will say that my favorite movie is Shawshank Redemption.
That's a good one, yeah.
Favorite, I really liked it too. Favorite TV show, Devil's Plan. Then for the favorite book, I'm gonna cheat a bit and I'm gonna pick a favorite fiction book than a favorite non-fiction book. So I will say that the favorite fiction book is Frankenstein, and then my favorite non-fiction was Thinking Fast and Slow.
Interesting.
Those who
What
know that one.
what's that about? I've never heard of that.
It's a book by Daniel Kahneman. It's really it's basically it's about kind of this whole argument that there's a slow brain and a fast brain, and basically the fast brain is there to kind of make some fast decisions with the kind of the little information you have, and then you have the slow brain to kind of more of a slow thinking process, which kind of double check, but it's a lot slower.
Hmm.
And basically the whole argument of the book is that we are kind of biologically programmed to be overconfident about things that are wrong because of the fast brain taking the spotlight
Right.
and convincing us of all those things that if you look a bit deeper, then it's not really what we think.
That's pretty
It was
interesting.
really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really interesting, and I learned a lot from that book.
It's a good way to frame the conversation, I think. Uh,
Yeah.
so whereabouts do you live, Agent?
I live in the beautiful province of Quebec in eastern Canada.
He's a fellow Canadian. Not many of us
Yes,
in the puzzling world.
not that many of us, it's true.
Yeah.
I know only one other person. I think it was Dimono, right? He was also Canadian, but I'm not aware of anyone else.
Oh, I can't remember. Maybe. Yeah. If you count Quebec as part of Canada, that is.
Well, I guess that's some Quebecers will disagree with that.
Yeah.
But let's not get political yet.
No. No. Okay. So, what do you do for work?
I'm a data scientist.
I mean, like the day job, not the secret agent stuff. Of course.
Does that answer the question?
And what's your dream job? Is that your dream job, data scientist?
Not really. I mean, my dream job will be like probably something with puzzles at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think I'm happy enough with the current job that I don't mind doing it like basically the normal work hours every day, right? So I'm not complaining either.
Also, my USB has been acting up, so if my camera freezes, you guys can let me know in the chat. Okay, let's go to an unusual question. What's the strangest online purchase you've ever made?
Oh boy. What's the strange thing I bought online? I'm not sure. I mean, I think like I definitely like for some online games, like I just bought some like skins or that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But which I guess it's in retrospect it's probably a waste of money, but it's not like that usual. I think it's kind of
No.
expected.
Yeah.
I don't think I
fair enough.
really buy much. I guess I don't buy much to begin with, and like even when I buy, it's usually in a store, so I probably don't have some really fascinating examples of that.
Yeah, I don't buy much online either. Although I think I was just thinking about what my answer would be to it, and this I didn't buy this online. My friend made this for me, but when the ears broke off, which I think they're a little bit
Okay.
fragile right now, I bought a little hat for him, and then I fixed the ears later. But that was probably the strangest purchase I've ever made online. It was a tiny hat for my big chungus. Are you more of an outside person or an inside kind of person?
Probably the fact that my main hobby is puzzling kind of implicitly answers that question.
Not much
But yeah,
puzzling outside.
definitely a inside person. Yeah.
Are you a morning person or more of a night owl? Is that also answered by puzzles?
I guess. I mean, I not really because I spend times on puzzles like late at night, but also sometimes early in the morning. But
Right.
I used to be much more of a night owl, and I would regularly sleep at something like 5 a.m. Now it's kind of like on and off. Sometimes I sleep at 2 a.m. Sometimes I wake up at 6 a.m. So it really depends on the day, I guess.
Whatever's convenient, I guess.
Yeah, whenever I feel like motivated to wake up, pretty much. Or I guess to not be asleep.
Yeah. Do you have any unusual skills or talents?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean,
Other than
I guess
puzzles.
would you like creating puzzles as a unusual skills? If so, then yes, maybe. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah.
In other circles, probably. Not so unusual in our circles.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Do you have any hobbies or interests outside of puzzling?
I think the other main one is video games, but I'm probably the kind of person that like I usually have just one hobby at a time, and
Hmm.
for the most of the past 2 years, then puzzle has been like creating and solving puzzle has been that hobby. But I spent a lot of times playing some video game in the past, things like Hearthstone, Civilization 5,
Mm.
Team Fortress 2, and then the Paper Mario series when I was younger, but kind of evolved over time. Then maybe some other hobbies I've had in some periods of my life were piano and long distance running. I still do a bit of those nowadays, but a lot less than I used to. And yeah, I
Those are
took
pretty cool.
like in terms of yeah, it was fun. I mean, I enjoy those too, but yeah, I think puzzles is really the one that takes the most time these
Hmm.
days.
Powfly Capling asked an interesting question. What is your
Okay.
second favorite dinosaur? I hope you've thought about this.
Yes, that's a very specific question. I definitely know what's my number one favorite dinosaur. I think it's the Velociraptor because when I was a kid,
Mm.
I had this book full of dinosaurs, and then I just saw like this one was the much smaller one, so I thought it was kind of a underdog, and it was quite cool. So yes, that's my favorite dinosaur in my heart. Then for the second one, I'm a bit less sure, but I would say probably something like you know the big one with the horn. Is it Stegosaurus or something? I guess that guy looks cool, so it's probably my second favorite.
Oh, I should have looked up dinosaurs before. Is it the Triceratops you're thinking of?
Oh, maybe it's the Triceratops, but you know the one with the horn. I honestly don't know the
The
name,
one,
but
the one horn at the front, like kind of like a
yeah,
rhinoceros, but with the
yeah,
thing.
sort of
Yeah, I
like
think that's
the
a
big guy, you know.
Triceratops. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I think that's right. Stegosaurus is the one with that's kind of like a turtle, right?
Oh, okay.
Or no, 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 no,
I,
no, no,
I
no, no,
think
no. That's I can't remember what it's called. But the Stegosaurus is the one with the ridges on the back. Yeah, yeah. I should have refreshed my memory about dinosaurs, knowing that
I mean,
Ankylosaurus. Thank you, Ankylosaurus is the turtle. Yeah,
I definitely know that Stegosaurus is one of the dinosaurs, but
yeah, yeah. I mean,
that's
you
as
could
far
say
as
anything Saurus, and I'd believe it was a dinosaur.
yeah, the Parasaurolopholosaurus is my number two favorite.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do one more kind of weird question. If you could trade places with anyone for a day, who would it be and why?
Um, hmm. My guess would be probably someone from like maybe Sangoku or Vegeta for Dragon Ball, just for the sake of like you know, I guess it would be cool just for a day to try to fight against super villains from all over the universe type of thing.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. All right. Let's go into the puzzle questions, I think. So let's start with the classic. What was the first puzzle that
Yeah,
you ever set?
yeah. This is a bit of a embarrassing story, but it actually took me almost a whole year before I was able to finish my first puzzle. And I kind of wasn't really smart in my decisions because basically the first time I tried to set a puzzle was I think it was the early pandemic days, so like April, May 2021 or 20, I guess. And At that time, it was kind of where the really the most popular video of CTC came. So the one from Ad van der Vettering with only 4 digits and the magic square, and then the
Mhm.
one the Miracle Sudoku from from Michael Lee as well. And I was kind of thinking, it would be cool if I can create another Miracle Sudoku. But this was maybe a bit unwise, considering I'd never even set a Sudoku before, or any type of puzzle for that matter.
Right.
But I was just trying to have a go at it, and basically the idea I had was, and I think it came from another video that was featured about the same time, where there was basically a anti-Manhattan constraint, where basically each digit defines the sort of orthogonal distance to itself, and then you cannot repeat a digit that's exactly n sort of Manhattan distance squares away from it. So
Is
I thought it
that
was cool because,
taxi cab? Is that what it's called?
yeah, I think it's also called the taxi cab,
Right.
the same thing. And yeah, I thought it was quite cool because if you think about it, then the 2 is like a anti-king, 3 is anti-knight, and then you have a bunch of other good stuff in between. So I thought, if you can
Yeah.
get the Miracle Sudoku with anti-king, anti-knight, why not with anti-taxi cab, right? So I had a go at it for a few weeks. And at first, I didn't want to place a digit because why place a given when you can use some other type of clue. So I decided to use a magic square in the middle, which will, of course, it will force a 5 in the central square. And then I saw that with this single 5, because of this sort of big 5 knight move, it ruled out a lot of squares like everywhere in the grid. So I thought it was quite interesting, and it did force a lot of things just in itself. But yeah, the thing is that, like, anytime I try to add more information, it just broke the puzzle. So yeah, even after like multiple days of trying to set with that, it just never really got anything. And I had some attempts here and there, but eventually I decided that maybe there's nothing to be done here. So I just stop this idea and kind of move on for a bit. But I think that when I actually did my first successful puzzle was in May the following year, and this was after I saw the wave particles puzzle from Totally Normal Cat, which got featured at that time, and
Mhm.
I guess I was still watching like CTC occasionally, and I thought it was quite fun. But I mean, this one really, it hit like something different in terms of the kind of deconstruction. It just like I saw the logic in it, the fact that you can kind of have this pattern of arrows that basically you have like a superposition of 3 arrows that just force the whole grid. And it kind of inspired me to have another go at it. And the actual first puzzle I did is the first one on my LMD page. It's called High Winds. Yeah, it's that one. And basically, I just copy pasted the large arrow in the middle from CNC's puzzle, and then I added the other small arrows in the middle 3 rows because I saw that if you add those, then it will force all 3 circles to be at least 6, because there's a 5 digits summing to 15. And yeah, it was pretty much it. Uh, and yeah, I think it's actually like, it's not an amazing puzzle, but it's still kind of a decent puzzle. I mean, the break-in is okay, and then there's maybe a few sticking points after, but I mean, for a first successful puzzle, it could have been worse, I guess.
Yeah. I hadn't realized that you started setting in 2021. Like, that was a shock to me when I was looking at your catalog earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had a slow start, I think. I mean, even if you think about it, I started trying to set even a whole year before that, but I think like I probably only became known like in late 2022, when I guess when I got the first feature, that's probably a big milestone. But yeah, I also started me knowing a bit more what I was doing at that time, I guess.
So let's I guess talk about that first feature. So it was this puzzle imprisoned with some brand new
Yeah,
Sudoku rules. How did it feel to get your first feature?
yeah, it was amazing, honestly. I mean, of course, it was. It's probably the same for everyone, but when I was kind of starting to be more involved in the community, it was kind of my number one goal was to eventually get featured, and yeah, it was just was really like a great moment when I saw that it happened and that I can make puzzles that are probably decent enough to justify being featured on the channel. And yeah, it was. I mean, obviously, even the features after that, it's still always a memorable experience to just see Simon or Mark having a go at the puzzles, and I guess other streamers too, like Zetamat or Niverio, among others. But yeah, this was really the one that I still probably remember the most because it's the first one and really was a turning point of some sort.
Yeah. So it took quite a while, I guess, to get your first feature. Like this is in
Yeah,
2022, July 4th, and the first puzzle was May 2021. So almost a full year since you set your first puzzle, but you said 2 years since you started trying to set. Was it
yeah,
sort of
it took
like
a while.
I guess validating in a way that you're like I don't know there? I don't.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like for sure, I had some moments when I thought, maybe this is not for me, and I'm not as clever as all of these other people who just give these absolute how do you say, these absolute gems of a puzzle on a kind of regular basis. But yeah, it was good that I to see that I finally got there after after a bit of missed steps along the way, I guess.
Oh, I mean, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with being a setter who isn't featured for a long time. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the culture of emphasizing features so much is a little
Yeah,
bit toxic, you know?
yeah, I agree, and I definitely think that nowadays, I like I know that I have some puzzles who will never get featured, but I still think some of them are good puzzles, and I think like, if I try to get puzzles to be featured with the goal of getting featured, then they might actually not be as good as some of my other puzzles. It's more
Yeah,
like it's more of a audience thing, right? I mean, yes, the puzzle being features are always really good, but of course, if it's a summation, new band, castle wall, then maybe it's a bit less likely that this puzzle will be featured
yeah.
than if it's any kind of Sudoku, right? So I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm still grateful whenever I get a feature, but I don't really expect it, and I don't really plan for it that much.
I feel like when
But
those kinds of puzzles that like the castle wall, you van something get featured,
yeah,
it's almost like oh no, I didn't actually want that to get featured because now it's presented as this impossible thing and no one will ever try anything other than that because Simon posted a Patreon solve that was like fucking I almost swore. That was like 4 hours, and no one's ever gonna try another one of these.
yeah. I mean, it's definitely like a bit more niche. I don't think it appeals. It's a kind of puzzle that. Well, first of all, Yuban in itself, it's already a very sort
Yeah,
of elusive genre, and if even when you start Yuban, then you probably expect that for the first several Ubans you solve, even if you're a very like prolific solver and you're good at many other puzzle types, then there's always kind of a learning curve with it. And
for
so
sure.
having a summation variant and then a castle variant on top of that, you can imagine that it's already limits a lot the kind of the population of possible solver who might be interested in solving it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't mind that much. The only thing is it does sting a bit. I'm not gonna lie when you see that the puzzle is there for a while with no rating, but I still kind of prefer going into this type of maybe a bit unorthodox puzzles just because I like thinking about the kind of predictions
Yeah.
in there.
I think someone asked a question related to this. If I Nope. I think it was a different person talking about a different thing at a different time. Oh, maybe this is related, I guess. Sort of. Not I shouldn't say it's related, but I guess we'll ask it right now. Two Whole Straw did ask about
Yeah.
whether or not you ever throw away a puzzle when you're setting because it just seems like it's too ridiculous, which I think kind of relates to like, well, no one's gonna solve this. It's just too ridiculous, you know?
Yeah, and the answer to that is not really, to be honest. I mean, I do throw away puzzles quite often, but usually it's because I think the puzzle is bad. It's not because I think it's too crazy or something. And I think like in absolute terms, there's no such thing as a line of unreasonableness. I think of it more as a kind of high risk, high reward type of situation where if you want to go into something that's a bit more complicated in terms of rule set or in terms of logic, then basically you expose yourself at a higher risk that something will go wrong with the puzzle, either because you kind of overlook something or you make a mistake during a setting, and you have to kind of balance all the different rules when you set so that it's still kind of a consistent solution path, and there's nothing that's too hard or that cause problem at some point during the solve. So it's definitely more of a like if you set something that's a bit unreasonable or ridiculous type of rule set, then it can go wrong really easily for sure. But I think it's also a high reward in the sense that if I think about the list of all the puzzles I've solved, then the ones that are among my absolute favorite of all time are usually those that have a very unique and interesting type of rule set, but they execute this rule set with so much mastery, and when you solve that, it almost feels like you go into a parallel universe, and you really come out like it's like you witness something special, after you manage to solve this type of puzzles. And I think with some of my puzzles, when I go into this type of more unorthodox rule set, I try to recreate a similar experience that you solve this and it's just really great. You really gotta remember it for a long time. But yeah, so no, I don't think I'm really. I mean, also I think that if at some point during the setting process, I think the puzzle starts being ridiculous, then usually it's not that the whole idea of the puzzle is ridiculous. It's more that this one particular deduction is ridiculous, right? So it can usually be kind of fixed during the process by making sure you basically follow the same principles as you will for any other puzzle.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I think it's really important to know when a deduction is ridiculous and to change it before you get too deep, because once you set the puzzle
Yeah.
around that, it becomes much harder to let go of that deduction, even if it remains as ridiculous as it was from the beginning.
Yeah, and sometimes when you have a really like unusual rule set, then it's not easy to know that a deduction is let's say unfair or unfun because you don't have much of a reference point. So honestly, in some cases, it comes only from feedback and from multiple test solves of the puzzle that you can realize, oh yeah, maybe this is not really a good way to go about it, right? But
Yeah.
yeah.
So this sort of leads into another question that I had about balancing puzzles that are challenging but not like frustrating for solvers, and I added on there enjoyable for a larger audience, but that's sort of
Mhm.
almost a different question, I think.
Yeah. So I think probably the answer to that is, at least part of the answer is, that I try to be efficient with my logic when I create a puzzle. And what I mean by efficient, it's that if you consider all the deductions, or sort of the steps, then I usually think there's like two types of deductions. There's the sort of intended slash artistic type of deduction, which are the one you intentionally place into the puzzle, that you think are interesting, you think are beautiful, you think will create something in terms of I guess they will add to the enjoyment of your puzzle. And then there's all these sort of practical, like mandatory deductions, which don't really contribute much to the puzzle. I mean, if you could remove all of those deductions and it's still essentially the same logic, but you still have to use some of those deductions just to get a unique solution at the end. And I think that the way I try to kind of guide my setting is, I try to maximize the aesthetic type of deductions and make all of these sort of mandatory, like,
Hmm.
requirement of making the puzzle unique as effortless as possible. And because I think that if you're solving a puzzle, then ideally you want to be constantly engaged into the solving process. You don't want to spend hours looking for like a hidden pair of some kind, or like scanning rows and columns, right? That's like the boring stuff. You want to
Right.
spend more time on something that's actually makes you think in a different way and makes you kind of appreciate the puzzle a bit more. So and I definitely try to have a lot of variety in terms of the sort of aesthetic type of deductions. But then when it comes down to the backbone of the puzzles, like how the Sudoku or the Philomeno or whatever is resolved at the end, then I usually try to make that part like kind of minimal, in a way that you don't spend too much effort on that.
Right. Is there is there some technique that you use to sort of minimize those like
Yes,
almost robotic deductions? I forget what the word you said was.
yes, the mandatory type of deductions. Yes, there's definitely some techniques I use for that. And sometimes the technique is just as simple as choosing the good rule set, because I think for with
Hmm.
Philomeno, for example, you kind of naturally have only you have very little deductions that are kind of just robotic slash mandatory, because basically what you do is, once you have approximately the shape of the regions, you just fill in numbers, right? So usually, like, when setting or solving Philomeno, I find that almost every step is actually something that's kind of it does make you think about the puzzle. It's not just like, I guess, because filling the number, it's already effortless by definition, right?
Mhm.
So I think for this type of rule sets, then I usually just sit down, set the puzzle, and then without even trying, it's going to have this kind of quality of being like straight to the point, right? But with other types of puzzles like Sudoku or Japanese sums, I think it's a lot less automatic. And if you're not careful, then you can end up, for example, with a chaos construction that has a lot of tedious, irregular Sudoku steps at
Mhm.
the end. And the way I try to mitigate this, and it's not always perfect. Sometimes you can only do so much as the sort of properties of the grid allow you. But let's say if I'm doing a Japanese sums, for example, you can usually like force the shading of the entire grid if you have some kind of lower bound and upper bound into the clues. And then once you have these degrees of freedom or this flexibility, then I kind of I think I usually spend like after I finish the kind of the backbone of the puzzle, I try to just use different values that could go there and just see which one gets the most fun
Mhm.
solution path to try to resolve them. And I think this helps. It probably applies to most of the number placement type of rule set, and it can make a meaningful difference if you have, even if you change just the value of a clue by one, then it can make the difference between having a naked single somewhere or just having like a X-wing or something else, right? So I think
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of room for you can optimize a lot with that.
Yeah, especially, I mean, a very good example of that sort of thing is Japanese sums, as you said, but also for killer Sudoku, like knowing I
Yeah.
kind of want this to be within this range and not just like putting a value on it yet, is really helpful
Yeah.
for figuring out what is the best way that the solver could use this cage once they figure out something else, which I don't know yet, but once I know what they're going to figure out, then what is the most useful value to put in that cage?
Yeah, it's probably I think one of the reasons why I think Killer Sudoku is among my favorite variants. It gives a lot of flexibility in terms of how much information you're giving with the clues you have. For other types of constraints, like like lines or arrows, like usually the moment you have the shape, then you cannot really optimize it more than that. So I tend
Yeah.
to, as a setter, I tend to like those types of constraints a bit less because of you don't have as much flexibility. But yeah, yeah, I like being able to kind of go back and change stuff a bit.
Yeah. Playmaker asked a question which I think is kind of related because we're talking about how you set your highest quality puzzles, and he asked what was the biggest push / inspiration that got you into setting more high quality puzzles.
I think for me this was when I published Wrench Heads. It's probably this was probably the kind of a turning point. And I remember you tested that puzzle
Yeah.
at the time. But yeah, because up until that point, I feel like I didn't really have the same setting style in a way because most of the rule set I did were kind of Sudoku with one variant, and
Mhm.
I didn't really make any very good puzzle with those types of rules. And I think part of it is just because I had less experience overall at that time, and even if I had the decent break-in, then the rest of the solution path was usually kind of bad because I just didn't know how to have a consistent flow in the puzzle. But it kind of led me to thinking that after I did Wrench Heads and I saw that this puzzle had a lot of positive feedback, then the way I kind of internalized it is that, okay, I'm terrible at standard variant, but maybe I can be quite good at this sort of more weird rule sets. And it kind of,
Right.
I think it kind of defines my setting style for the rest of those years, basically. And I kind of continued even more in the direction of weird rule sets since that point. And I guess when I look back to it, honestly, I actually solved Wrench Heads recently just for fun. And I think a lot of it was just dumb luck because the puzzle didn't work the way I intended. Like the way Okay, this is a minor spoiler, but at some point in this puzzle, you end up with a bunch of 2, 3, 4 triples, and the the intended way I had in mind to resolve that was basically a bifurcation, but turns out you can just color it and it works fine.
Hmm.
So I suspect most people ended up coloring it, and but if they really follow the intended path, then maybe they will not people will not like this puzzle as much because it wasn't great, honestly. But that being said, I do think that I may be a bit better if the rule set I'm playing with already has a bit of a novelty to it. Um, I'm just not great at kind of trying to push something that has been done like hundreds of times before, and then somehow finding something new within this type, let's say a killer rule set or a German Whisper rule set. Like probably if I make a puzzle with this kind of rule set, it's gonna be it's gonna be average at best. I'm fine with that, but I just think that if I if I start with already something a bit more unique in the rule set, then it usually leads to a more interesting puzzle.
I think that's actually a really common reason why setters burn out of puzzle making is that they're just using standard variants and they're just like, I can't make a difference in killer Sudoku or era Sudoku. What's even the point? But I think they kind of neglect a bunch of weird stuff that they could have a lot of fun with if they just try.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe like it really depends on for each person, and maybe honestly maybe some of it is like a bias from a previous experience I had, where when I did the standard variant, I didn't really the puzzle really weren't that great, but suddenly when I try to innovate a bit, then oh yeah, people actually like this type of puzzle. But I don't know. I think it's in a way it feels like kind of a head start, right? If you start with a rule set that's because when you have a let's say a more commonly used rule set, then if you want to have a puzzle that stands out from the rest, then you kind of need to figure out something. But if you have a rule set already, then that's it. You already have something that I mean, it can be, of course, like a rule set can be worse than a standard variant type of rule set, but I think in some case that you can actually improve in some ways. So
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of prefer that.
Yeah, Glipperol says agreed, no more killer or era Sudoku, please. I I feel the same way, especially about things like anti-knight and stuff like that. It's if I see a pure anti-knight puzzle, there is like absolutely no chance I'm gonna solve that because who like it's been
Yeah.
done so many times. Who cares, really? Like
I mean, for me personally, I wouldn't mind having more like great pure killers or great arrows, but probably I'm not gonna solve more. I don't want to solve more anti-knights. Yeah. I
mhm.
don't think I guess I just think generally speaking that especially the strong negative constraints are just not that great because you just lose so much control on the grid that basically every cell in the grid, whenever you have the tiny bit of information on that cell, it just propagates a lot more. And like if you want to control the solution path in the anti-knight puzzle, it's much harder than the standard Sudoku, in my opinion. And I think already standard Sudoku it's quite hard for that. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
I
just don't
think
see the point.
that might be why people are like you were saying you're initially drawn to like the miracle Sudoku. I think that might be why initially setters are drawn towards like negative constraints because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it'll do the work for me. But then later on, you realize you don't actually want it to do the work for you. You want to do the
Yeah,
work.
exactly. Yeah, and I think it probably also comes with experience too, because like today I'm pretty confident that if I have the ending of a puzzle and I'm able to control the way it's going to resolve with the deductions I have, then it's probably going to be better, I think, that if I just let this or that constraint do the work. Because
Mm.
I don't know, I feel like the intent when you like think about the intended step, usually it's going to be a cleaner logic than just whatever like already exists in the structure of the puzzle.
All right. Let's not spark any debates in chat. Let's move on from the topic before we get people riled up. What setters do you feel like your style is like most similar to, or what setters had the most impact on your style?
Hmm. That's a good question. I would say like people I have a similar style with are probably like Jesper, Magnus, people like
Mm-hmm.
maybe Ken, Niverio, with the kind of I guess probably that I would say that the most defining feature I think of my setting style is like basically do just about anything with deep puzzles, and I think these are the people which I identify kind of also do the same. So yeah, that's probably I mean yeah, this is where I see the most similarity.
Would you say that's a similar set of setters that you like often solve from?
There was at some point, I think it was late, fall last year, where I basically did kind of almost the whole catalog from Jesper and then from Magnus. Also, I did a bunch from TNT as well. So yeah, I used to kind of set more from the setters who sorry, to solve more from the setters who I think I have most similarity with the setting style. I still kind of do to some extent, but because I've already solved most of their puzzles, then I kind of I kind of have to find something else to solve
Right.
as well. And I think also from the old school LMD type of sorry, there's a bit of visualize. There's a bit of sunlight here.
Yeah,
Okay,
no worries.
is it better?
Yeah.
Yeah, so from the old school LMD community, there's like a bunch of people as well who I don't know if I would say that our setting styles are similar, but I really aspire to in terms of the type of puzzles they're able to create and how well they can do it. So people like iBag or Uhu or
Mm-hmm.
Zigzag, however you're supposed to pronounce it. All of these people, they've been really master with the type of puzzle they have created. And yeah, I try to get inspired from the work they had occasionally.
Yeah. Uh, I guess we answered Isaiah's question. Sorry, Isaiah. We will go to a very common question that sometimes is a boring answer, but sometimes has a nice answer. Super Rabbit asks, what's your favorite puzzle that you've ever made?
Yeah, I thought about this a lot, but honestly, I'm not sure if I have a clear answer. I mean, I definitely have like some puzzle which for me stand out in one way or another, but I feel like kind of trying to pick one because it's not really
Mm-hmm.
comparing apples to apples in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna go straight to the point, and I'll try to maybe offer some other slightly different interpretations of the same question,
Right.
a
Yeah.
different set of criteria. But
What's your
I
favorite
think
apple? Like.
yes, my favorite apple is I think it will be Twilight Cave Philomeno. I think that will be the one. And the reason is I try to think a bit about some distinctive things about some of my puzzles, and I think this one has the very sort of weird, in a way, characteristic that the way it resolved is just hilarious, in my opinion. So for those of you who have solved it, you'll probably know what I'm thinking about. There's really like, it kind of feels like the entire puzzle is just like a very big logical joke. And yeah, and I think also that it's probably kind of one of the puzzles where I was able to have the most control until the very end of the puzzle. Mainly because it's a Philomeno, and this is so easy to do with Philomenos. So of course this plays a large part, but yeah, I just think that there's really something about this puzzle that when I think about it, I just puts a smile on my face because the whole idea is just hilarious in my opinion. Which I mean, of course, I probably prefer the logic and some of their puzzles, but just like having the memory of this one, it kind of gives something different for me. So
Yeah, I mean, if I look at this grid, I think this is probably 5 stars, and look at the rule set, but it's actually 3 stars on LMD. So there's clearly a joke.
well, I mean, yeah, honestly, like the rule set, I think with probably you could say that with a lot of my puzzles, the puzzle looks much harder than it is. But maybe
Right.
that's
Yeah.
just because I know these constraints obviously because I set with them. I mean, the constraints, the rules are definitely like they're not easy rules, but I don't have that many like really hard puzzles with some crazy like complicated logic that you have to basically have to have a PhD in puzzles to understand it. It's not like that. But
PhD in puzzles.
yeah, so I said this was my favorite, and then
So what's your
also thought
favorite
about
orange, I guess?
my favorite orange. So I thought actually about two different ways to answer that question. I guess first one is what do I think is my best puzzle, kind of in a objective-ish way, and what do I think is the puzzle I'm the most proud of. So for my best puzzle, I think the honor will have to go to Dragon Stake, which was a yin yang kind of line type of puzzle. And the reason, actually, there's multiple reasons why I think it will be the best puzzles. First one being it's the one that got into the CTC book, so that's already something. Then it's the one that has the most solves, the one that has the most favorites, also on LMD. Then it's the one that got the best feedback from Simon on the CTC channel when he solved it, and I think he even like recommended, kind of insisted that other people should have a go at it, which was really high praise and to hear at the time. So I think if you look at all the numbers, the sort of statistics of the puzzle and also the audience, in a way, I think this is the one that probably beats all of the others that I have created. And because if I look at some of my more recent puzzles, then I have some where I think the logic is definitely a lot more interesting and richer, but they were solved maybe by 20 or 30 people. So if you have like 30 people versus thousands of people who solve a puzzle, then even if the one solved by 30 people is maybe a bit better, then I think like in a way the wide-ranging effect that Dragon Snake had is really at least in terms of my puzzles right now, there's not really any competition there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the title
Yeah.
of that video was like, please solve this puzzle or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
or if you have any time, solve this puzzle, something like that. So, definitely something that people took into consideration.
Is it okay if I just go like close the window for everything?
Yeah, go for
I
it.
think it
Yeah.
bothered me a bit. I'll be right back. How do I do that? I can figure out how to get myself.
Mini house tour. Which window did he close? I thought he meant the blinds. Or maybe it was noise, I think, maybe. Floating cell phone back.
Yeah, it turns out I don't know how to close this this thing. So let's just ignore that for a moment. All right. Yes. Sorry about this. Okay, so where were we at?
Oh, forget. We're talking about Dragon Snake.
Yes, I said this was I think it's the best puzzle I have created.
Right.
And then for the last part, I was gonna try to answer which puzzle
Are you
I'm the
most
most
proud of?
proud of. Yes. And I think for this one, my pick will be what's it called again? Sky Cagers. Sky Cagers. So yes, it's the sort of killer skyscraper Sudoku. And the reason I say is the puzzle I'm the most proud of. It's because if you think about what you expect from a puzzle, and I think this is probably the one where I beat the expectations the most in the sense that also I think I beat the expectations in a way that's really hard to do because I think it doesn't have necessarily the most dense or the most rich solution path of all my puzzles, but compared to the other Sudoku, I think this one is it's by far the one with the most rich and most dense solution path. And because if you think about it, in the Sudoku grid, I think the logic overall gets saturated really quickly in the average puzzle because you get a lot of sort of interaction just by placing digits. It creates a lot of impact on the rest of the grid, so it quickly becomes like very restricted even when you have only a handful of clues. But but yeah, I think with that particular puzzle, it really feels kind of, for me at least, it feels like almost 3 Sudoku in one in terms of how much steps you have in the puzzle with the kind of cage building, then the arithmetic, and somehow it's still kind of resisting until the very end of the puzzle. Like there's no point of the puzzle when you're just like scanning and placing digits. It's always thinking about the cages, about the skyscrapers until the end. And yeah, I think the fact I was able to do that with a puzzle, it's probably never gonna happen again, because well, I guess I don't set that much Sudoku anymore to begin with, so there's not many opportunities, and also yeah,
Right.
I just think it's very hard to do in general. But and probably a lot of it just comes from the rule set, right? Because when you have all of these layers of logic on top of the 9 by 9 some sort of digit placement thing, then you kind of have the opportunity for doing that. But yeah, I think it's something I probably won't ever do again.
Right. Well, congratulations on accomplishing that.
Thank you.
I'm not going to ask what is your worst puzzle because that just feels like kind of a boring question to me personally. But
I mean,
what's your biggest
I
puzzling
can answer.
regret? Like, is there any puzzle that you want to take back or redo, sort of thing? I think that's more of an
Yes, there's
interesting
a
way
few
to
of
put it.
those.
Yeah.
I mean, and probably most of them are not LMD because I do like a big pre-filtering of puzzles before I put them anywhere other than testing. But from the ones on LMD, I think the one I regret the most is convolution. I think it's one of the first puzzles I created, and I don't know why I created this. I think I was just like happy that you can have a sort of spiral type of thing with the positioning of. It was a crop key, white crop key, no negative constraint type of puzzle, and yeah, I mean it looks pretty, I
Hmm.
think, right? Because you have all these white dust in a spiral, but the logic and the solution path is just very, very not fun. And you have this big random like bifurcations in the middle where you basically have to find the one cell that sees, because the coloring type of puzzle, you have to find the one cell that sees all of the other colors, and you have to
Mm.
scan for like hidden triples of colors in random places of the grid. It's just pain, honestly. And I think this like if you had the textbook example of a bad puzzle, then I think this is pretty much as close as you can get. So yeah, I wish I could remove that one.
Yeah, Rockrat makes a good point. If it doesn't have set in it, then it might not be the worst example of a
I
puzzle.
mean, at least set is something you kind of do on purpose, right? I'm not the biggest fan of set, but like if you can have a puzzle that needs set in order to be solved, then I guess that's already something to show for. But this is just like there's nothing really to show for in that puzzle. Except the pretty layout, I guess. But then, I mean, yeah, I don't think this is worth much, honestly.
All right. Okay. Oh, we missed one. What puzzle do you think, or maybe it's one of the ones you already mentioned, encapsulates the essence of your style of setting?
I'm not sure because I think probably something like Afterlife, maybe, or either one of the yin yang type of deconstructions. I did one first with sort of empty shaded cells, which is called Half Life. And then I did sort of a sequel to that where I basically put some phenomenal regions on these shaded cells. And that one is called Afterlife. And I think probably, yeah, one thing that's in common with both of these puzzles is that you really have kind of sort of a kind of logical progression in the solve where there's sort of multiple layers, and then you kind of there's the shading layer, then there's the region division layer, and then there's the number placement layer, and you kind of make progress into every layer in a way that it basically uses just the bare minimum of information you can have, but you can use it to get some restriction, and then as you progress, then it's kind of you're basically redoing the same part of the puzzle but with the different layers. And I
Right.
just think that kind of encapsulate in a way the fact that I like to kind of have different type of approaches to the same clues in a way, or the same parts of the grid within the same puzzle. And probably these are the puzzle that which encapsulate that the most.
Mhm.
But it's a bit of a hard question to answer because, and I know this was also one of the questions was about my setting style, but I don't think my setting style changed that much. But the type of constraints I used, I think there's a big difference
Mhm.
compared to what I did before. If you compare the puzzles I create now to what I did like 1 year ago, then it's totally different types of puzzles.
Right. Maze Gator asks, how do you find the time to make puzzles?
Yeah.
Great
That's like
question.
it's a bit of a tricky one to answer because I mean, I probably like spend time either setting or solving puzzles more than I should in some ways, and you know I'm really enjoying it, but at the same time, like I mean, I think probably the answer at the end of the day is that whenever I have free time, then a large portion of that goes into setting or solving puzzles, and that's where I get the time. And also sometimes like late in the night or early in the morning, sometimes if I have really like, let's say if I have an idea I want to continue setting, then I can use these extra hours occasionally. But yeah. Yeah, I guess my answer kind of goes in the same direction as Clover. That yeah, I prioritize it over some other things, but probably most people would not prioritize puzzles over these other things.
Yeah. Like sleep or eating.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're on kind of a break time with not talking about anything specific. I'll ask Stark's question, which is Agent Kochaku Wang.
Yeah. So when I saw that question, I confess that I had never solved the Kuchoku
Oh
before.
no. Poor
I
Stark.
but I did try it a bit since then. I solved like 3 or 4 in the last week. But my first thought is that I don't enjoy it that much, to be
Yeah.
honest, because I just I just don't like the core mechanic of like counting cells vertically and horizontally and then trying to see if it's really a straight line. I don't know, I don't really like it that much. And
Yeah.
I think like probably if you're a very visual type of solver and like let's say you see a line that you know has to be crossed and you just know like which one is the right angle, then you can probably enjoy Kuchoku a lot more. But I'm not really that kind of solver, so I think it's just it's not the best puzzle type for me. So my answer to the question will be that probably never. If I do want Kuchoku, it's probably gonna be a meme, but I don't think
It
I will.
usually is, so.
Well, maybe. I mean, honestly, like, I mean, the ones I solved were, I could tell they were not intentionally made to be memes, but yeah, it wasn't my favorite type of puzzle. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Let's get back on topic with Pietato's question. How do you manage to create puzzles that are so hard and yet at the same time so smooth? I think we've sort of touched on this already, but you can reiterate if you want.
Yeah, I think earlier what I said was kind of going into the direction of answering that question. But yeah, basically, I think the my answer to this is that I try to come up with some interesting, I guess, engaging deductions that probably you wouldn't see in other puzzles, or that really come from the interaction of rules I decided to set with. And it's probably those deductions that contribute the, I guess, most of the difficulty to my puzzles. But then once you have all of that, then usually I try to make the not essential part of my puzzle as easy as possible, as much as possible with the type of puzzle I'm creating. So, I mean, I would think that's probably where the smoothness comes from.
Right. Makes sense. Continuing with the viewer questions, I suppose. Doomdiet had asked, do you typically have a specific idea in mind when you decide to set with specific constraints, or do you experiment with the constraints and see what works as you make that puzzle?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's good to have some specific ideas in mind when setting a puzzle, but I usually don't do it at the very start, because at the very start, I guess also part of it comes from the fact that I don't normally set puzzles that I really understand very well. Like usually, if I start setting a puzzle, then it's probably some variation of a rule set I've never solved myself. So and I just find it in a way more engaging when part of the setting process is to discover the logic that's possible with this rule set as we go. So usually when I start setting a puzzle, I'm not really in a good position to really identify what I can do with this type of puzzles. Usually comes more like either after doing the example or sort of midway in the puzzle, that then I think about, yes, okay, I can probably have this type of pattern or deduction that I know is possible, and I think it will be cool to have it at some point in the puzzle. But yeah, I guess maybe I can give one specific example of that. So I have a puzzle called Black Reach, which was basically a U-Bahn slash roller coaster hybrid. So essentially, you have the segments of the U-Bahn are sort of defining the roller coaster sums, and in that puzzle there was I wanted to do something with the Japanese sum cipher, where if you have a pattern on the U-Bahn clue of two different letters, so you can see it in the main puzzle, there's the H and G in row whatever that is, I guess 10 and 11, and minor spoiler, but at some point in the puzzle you reach the conclusion that H and G are a 0-1 pair, and this basically creates a sort of either or type of logic, where either you have 0 branch in column 10 and 1 branch and 1 line in column 11, or you have 1 branch in column 10 and 0 line in column 11, and you can actually get some deductions from that. And I was kind of trying to allow this, even right after the break-in. I was thinking to myself that, okay, let's just leave the 0 and 1 cipher untouched, so that I can have this type of ambiguity later in the puzzle. But so I guess these sort of things where sometimes I have maybe a general type of idea I would like to implement later, but I don't really tend to like figure out some specific deductions in advance, really.
Interesting. I, I think that's pretty normal, I would say, but there are some people who are exceptions. Okay, what's the most unusual theme or inspiration you've used for a puzzle?
The most unusual. That's hard to answer because you can, like, I guess, like, in some ways, the inspiration of most of my puzzles is unusual.
Yeah.
But now, um, I'm trying to think if I have one that. Oh yeah, I guess maybe the one that comes to mind is for a puzzle I didn't finish yet.
Okay.
But yeah, it's idea I've had for a while. I don't mind seeing it, even though I didn't finish the puzzle. But I've been wanting for several months now to do a Nurikabe slash 838 permaculture. So 838, for those who don't know, it's a directed loop type of rule set that was invented by Tuas on LMD. There's been a few puzzles with that rule set, but I think it's there's maybe not many of them outside of LMD, so it's quite a lesser known rule set. But I think it's one of my favorite sort of vanilla type of rule sets. And the reason I thought about making a permaculture with that is because I saw another puzzle. I saw another puzzle a few months ago on LMD, which was a sort of triple permaculture with, I think it was coral, Matthew, and something else. But I just like the fact of having a loop in the permaculture, because then the question of, like, you also need to consider the interior versus exterior of the loop as part of the equation, and you can kind of leverage that to have some connectivity type of logic, which I thought was quite interesting. And so I started playing around with it, and yeah, I mean, I haven't finished the puzzle yet, but what I can see is that if I ever finish it, it's going to be very hard and probably very like unexpected in terms of what types of deduction you can do with this rule set. But yeah, that's probably what I can think of. Probably another good candidate will be my Satan puzzle, which is I think it's the second last on LMD now. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I think it's definitely by far my craziest rule set, I think, currently on LMD. But yeah,
That is crazy.
it's a bit of a almost a novel at this point. But yeah, I mean, this is probably like, I guess, going back to the question about unreasonableness, this is probably like by any reasonable stretch, it's a very unreasonable type of puzzle. But yeah, I mean, I still think that the type of logics you have in with this rule set is very interesting, and I can recommend to anyone looking for a solid challenge. But I think it will definitely be like a challenge to solve that.
uh, Palfly has a question in chat, which is pretty specific, so maybe we should answer that now before we get away from it.
Yeah.
They said, I remember us solving a Xenonetics 10 by 10 CC in voice chat and completely working around the intended break-in. Do you often find ways around the intended path of puzzles? Guess that's kind of hard to know.
Yes. I mean, it's hard to know, but like usually I mean, sometimes it just happens that there's accidentally another alternative way to solve the puzzle, which is like also very clean. But I mean, when I find something that's really like doesn't make sense to have that as a logical step in the puzzle, I usually just don't use it.
Mhm.
And I think like probably for the very distinctive elements of a puzzle, like the break-in or like the 2-3 key deductions that you really wanted the solver to find. Like I think I probably don't go around that too often, but I think there's a point where you get into more of the sort of less distinct deduction where there's usually more than one ways to make progress at that point. And yeah.
Sort of related to this, when you're testing one of your own puzzles, are you like actively looking for bypasses, or do you not really care if there are like other nice ways to get through the puzzle?
I usually don't. I think I care less and less about having other ways to get through the puzzle. I mean, it also depends about what exactly is the bypassing. Like if there's one deduction that I really like in the puzzle, then let's see. I guess if there's if I can identify like the 2 or 3 main deductions that I really like in the puzzle, and I think everyone should find them, then I usually try to at least keep those ones intact. But at the same time, I think it's normal that it's probably even better if you allow to make progress in multiple different ways. And probably depend also a lot of the rule set, but when you have a rule set that's very sort of locally contained, that everything you know about one region of the puzzle has no effect on anywhere else. So something like Philomeno or Kakuro, then you can kind of do it in a way that you have multiple independent parts of the puzzle, and
Mhm.
then the solver can just do them in any order that they want, and it's still going to basically be the same. But I think for a general puzzle design perspective, the more I set puzzle, the less I care about like whether the solver finds the one intended way, and the more I start to take a step back, and if they find one of the multiple ways that are possibly interesting, then I
Mhm.
think this is good enough, right? And maybe one more thing on this.
Mhm.
I think it's one of the reasons why the rule set plays a big role into like I think it's very important to have a good rule set when you set a puzzle, because if you have a rule set where naturally, even if it's not intended, the deductions you find are fun and interesting, then it kind of allows for solvers to find something that was not intended, and they won't want to bang their head if they
Mhm.
find other logic, right? It's still gonna be like maybe equally fun. But if it's like I have some rule sets in mind where I try to set with that, but the moment I was deviating for the intended path, you get a lot of weird interactions that are really ugly. And for this type of rule set, even if you are really careful to control the solution path, then I think you can expect that people who don't find the solution path will really hate the puzzle.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any like deductions in one of your puzzles that you just know that everyone has done it the other way, but you really like that deduction?
Kind of. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind was one of the steps in Marco Polo. So that was a big sort of loop slash chaos deconstruction type of puzzle, and basically there is one particular step towards the end of the puzzle. And it's quite funny because if you look at the comments for that puzzle, then there was basically two types of comments. There was people saying that the puzzle was smooth from start to finish, and then there's also some people saying that the ending was much harder than expected, or they found like 2/3. They spent 2/3 of the time on the last, let's say, 1/3 of the puzzle. And by looking at these comments, I can immediately know which one of those people found the intended logic and which ones didn't. And yeah, this is it's actually a bit interesting because I remember that this puzzle was actually Zetamat solved this puzzle on his stream, and I know he didn't really enjoy the ending that much because like it's the kind of ending where there's really one tiny thing of the puzzle which is forced in a somewhat decent type of not look ahead way, but everything else is just pain. And if you don't find this one particular deduction in the puzzle, then you're in for hours of pain, basically. And yeah, and thinking back about this particular puzzle, I think it was a mistake on my side. And if I redid it, then I'm definitely going to overclue it. Just add like one extra given or one extra arrow so that you can basically already know the conclusion of that intended step. But yeah, I mean, it can happen sometimes.
Yeah. It's definitely harder when you like the step to
Yeah,
get
I
rid of
mean,
it.
I didn't even like it that much. It's
Oh.
more like I know if I wanted to remove that step, then I will basically need to give something for free at the very start. And I guess I cared about it more than I should have, because I was thinking, oh yeah, if I allow to just basically place this digit in this loop segment for free, then what happened to the break-in, right? It's like I gave a solver something without them even finding the break-in. But I think nowadays it will be, I'm pretty sure I will not make the same decision for that.
How do you come up with your puzzle names? And what's your best puzzle name?
I do that less and less, probably. I mean, I know like last year I was kind of naming most of my puzzles, but I think now I'm just gonna write something like, summation U-ban 1, summation U-ban 2, summation U-ban 3. I mean, I have some name puzzles, but my best name, probably the one that feels the most interesting, will be Half-Life and Afterlife. because it's kind of a natural sequel thing, and also in Afterlife, it's like the shaded cells come back to life with the Philomeno essence. So I think it's kind of interesting from that perspective. Yeah, I don't really name puzzles that much anymore.
Yeah. It's kind of sad, but
Is it? I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. I think there's some value that if you read the puzzle name, then I think it's good that you know exactly what to expect, at least with the rules, right? So
but imagine if
then it kind of
people named
yeah.
like books like that, like fiction book number 2800.
Yeah.
That would be very
I mean,
boring.
I think if I had like 100 classic Sudokus, and I would probably want to name them, but like I think since every puzzle I have is already a different rule set, then probably it's more of a showmanship than anything else.
True, true. Do you have any advice for new setters or a piece of advice that you received early on that really helped you?
I think the big one, it's probably a bit obvious, maybe not, but it's solve if you want to improve at setting, especially if you want to improve on a particular type of puzzle. My advice is to solve more puzzles, especially puzzles of the particular genre you're interested in setting. And I originally saw that, I think, from Tall Cat's Setter Spotlight on the CTC channel, where I think he was basically saying that also something similar, that the number one thing he recommends to improve at setting will be to solve more puzzles. And I've been trying to apply that principle. I don't do it all the time, but I remember, for example, when I did all of the yin yang hybrid, uh, before I did any puzzles, I was just solving a bunch of yin yangs. And then when I switched to Nuikabe, I solved a bunch of Nuikabe and so on. And it helped. I think it helped a bit. It kind of definitely got me familiarized with the logic I can use with those types of puzzles. And yeah, I think it's just a general good practice to have. Even today, I still kind of do it sometimes. I got a bit lazier though, but I still kind of like right now. I'm planning to do a Japanese sums, and I was solving a bunch of Japanese sums last week. So I still try to do it sometimes, I guess.
So I guess sort of related to that, Doomdia
Mhm.
had asked, how much do you think setting versus solving puzzles has affected the quality of the puzzles that you set?
Yeah, I think solving puzzles is super important. It's probably the number one the most impactful factor on that. Then I was thinking about it, but for setting puzzles, I think it's a bit more subtle, because on one hand, like let's say I have a specific puzzle I want to create, then if I spend like a large chunk of time in a row on that puzzle, I'm going to be in a better place in terms of context switch, of being able to really think deep about the implications of the rule set. But at the same time, um, I think it's easy to get, if you spend too much time on a puzzle, it's easy to get tunnel vision, and
Mm.
that, like, you think that you know what's the break-in you intend, and you think that obviously people are going to look at the grid, they're going to see the break-in right away, or maybe won't be that hard, but you might be missing that there's some alternative logic available, or maybe it's not as clear, and as clean as you hope it will be. So,
Mhm.
and I think you can only sort of realize those things either by having feedback from testers, or you need to just like stop the puzzle for a bit, then come back to it a few days later with a fresh mind. Then you can probably not doesn't always works, but sometimes it allows to kind of see something you missed before. So yeah, I don't have a clear answer for that. It definitely got me thinking about like if you set a puzzle, is it better to do it in a single sitting, or should you take like small chunks of doing one part of the puzzle, then double checking when you kind of forgot a bit? Like, does the logic work the way it was intended, or is it just uh, is it not that obvious? And honestly, I think there's no right answer. I think it probably depends a lot of what type of puzzle you're creating. I know from uh, for the Philomeno puzzles, I usually do all of it in one sitting, but then for the Sudoku or Japanese sums, it's almost never happens. So
Right.
I guess it depends for me at least.
KNT asked a question in chat a little bit ago. Have you ever tried to set a genre and been disappointed in the lack of depth, variety, aesthetics of the deductions in the genre as you try to set it?
Yes, it happens probably more often than I would like to admit. But one example that I very clearly remember was a Renban Haikyuu type of hybrid. So Haikyuu, it's a kind of number placement genre where it's basically like a mix of, it's like Sudoku but with a limited range, in the sense that, for example, the digit 1 cannot repeat in a row or column, but only if it's 1 or less cells away. But if it's 2 cells away, then you can have a repeated 1 in the same row or column. And then same with 2, but it's up to 2 cells away, and then so on for the higher numbers. And you basically have regions of different size which contain the digits 1 to n once each. And yeah, I was trying to do something with that, and the beginning was okay-ish. I mean, you can have some patterns that when you have a run band that goes out in diagonal, then it will remove itself and the other cells if they are close enough from the cell below it. So it was, the interactions were fine, but just the fact that whenever you have like, basically when you have some digits, then there's like a weird cascading type of effect where everything just gets forced and you don't control you have no control anymore. And it's just not fun trying to see like which digit is the one that can appear only once, because they all behave differently. And yeah, I ended up I think and respectfully for the Haikyuu fans out there, but I ended up throwing it into the garbage can, and I never tried to set another Haikyuu again. Yeah, it's a bit similar to Anti-Knight, I agree. I mean,
Right.
at least for Anti-Knight, I think you have more solving tools you can use, so you can try to mitigate that. And I don't really like conceptually the idea of using a solver for puzzles, but at least you have the option, you know?
Yeah. I think maybe it's more similar to like Anti-Knight in a 6x6 where it's really just like there's only one way that it works, and you just know that it's just going to work like that, so there's not really much. Yeah. And you just get one digit and it's done.
Yeah, sort of.
How would you describe your reputation as a constructor? Does that match like what you would consider like reality?
I think probably my reputation is that I'm a bit crazy, I suppose, and maybe it's true. I don't know, but I definitely like to kind of challenge myself with rules I don't fully understand, and I think probably like yeah, it looks like I like to do different types of stuff, and um, I mean, hopefully people think my puzzles are at least decent, and I think at least some of them do. The ones that are regular sort of solvers, but yeah, I think it's probably the one trait that will be the most distinct about my puzzles. Um, and I imagine probably some people. So I think so far I kind of agree with everything I just said, but I probably also have a reputation of someone who makes really hard puzzles, and maybe I agree with that a bit less. And I think probably every setter who makes puzzles that don't have the most familiar rule sets kind of probably feels the same to some extent, but there's really only 2 or 3 puzzles on my LMD profile that I think are really hard. The main ones are like Black Reach and My Staten, but then apart from that, most of them are. I mean, it's hard, but like usually there's a simple way to kind of think about the logic. You don't need to like really bang your head against the wall and like write down a 10-line proof on a piece of paper. You just need to kind of see the idea, and then you can progress in the puzzle, right? So
10 lines isn't even that long, but Ron Planer asked an interesting question. What have you learned from watching solves of your puzzles?
yeah. So there's definitely a few occasions where I watch a solve and I realized that the puzzle was, at least some part of the puzzle was pretty bad.
Right.
And I think yeah, I think that in terms of like the constructive type of feedback, a lot of it usually comes from watching streams, because I guess people are normally very polite, and if they even either the people like a puzzle and then they give positive feedback, or they don't like it and don't give feedback. There's a few people who have occasionally given some more constructive feedback, like in verbal, I guess, and I that's always very instructive. But probably the most regular, if you wish, source of feedback in terms of identifying the steps in the puzzle that just aren't that great came from watching people solving my puzzles, and even in some featured video, for example, going back to the very first feature, Imprisoned, I think there was the part near the end where Simon, I saw that it was not, the logic was not as clean the way he explained it, and it was the intended logic, by the way. It's just that I didn't really realize at the time, but the logic I had in the puzzle wasn't that clean as I thought, and I thought it was all right. But then when I watched the video, I was like, oh wow, is it really that bad? And does it deserve to be featured, even though there's this kind of not so great step here or something? But and yeah, I think like probably after solving puzzles, then watching solve is probably the second most impactful activity, I guess, in terms of what I've learned about creating puzzles.
Yeah. What I hate the most is when there's a step that I'm like, ew, I didn't like that so much actually. And then Simon says, "Oh, what a beautiful step." I'm like, no, don't. Please stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it wasn't intended and I didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like there's a few features I think where he found a step that was actually better than the intended step. So
Yeah, that does happen sometimes.
yeah.
Who's your favorite person to watch solve your puzzles?
Should I say that? I I really enjoy watching anyone who solves my puzzles. It's always very fun and very instructive, and I feel like uh, I don't feel terribly comfortable picking a favorite because then it will sort of imply that I don't enjoy the others as much. But I don't want to really go into that direction. I think like anyone who I watch, I've never seen anyone solve one of my puzzles and that I didn't enjoy. It's always great to see.
It's a good answer. Have you done any collaborative setting?
Yes, I've done a few. It's been a while, but I did one with Rockrat Zero, which was the Shimaguni Killer Sudoku hybrid. And I believe Simon solved that one. And then I had another collab with Turgonist at the time. I think it was a arrow diagonal, drop key, Sudoku, irregular Sudoku too. And actually, both of them were really fun. And I should probably do more collabs at some point. But yeah, right now I think those are the only two. Well, they're I guess I know two is should be considered a lot of collabs or not a lot, but it's where I'm at least.
David Ratner asked an interesting question. Who else would you like to collaborate with if possible or asked by someone?
I think definitely the same list of people who I've identified that I think I have a similar setting style. So people like KNT, Niverio, Jasper, Magnus, these will be probably among the people I'd be really interested in collaborating with. I also had some thoughts at some point that maybe reaching out to people who I view as kind of the expert in some particular type of puzzle, and then trying to see if they'd be interested in a collab will be very instructive as well.
Yeah. Kochaku, of course.
Yeah. Well,
It's
definitely my
just
first pick, but I'm not 100% opposed to it. I'm just slightly opposed to it. No, just kidding.
What makes you want to solve something versus not solve something? Like, is there specific characteristics of a puzzle that you're like, no, thank you?
I think usually I can have a pretty good idea, like if I think I'm gonna like the puzzle or not, based on the rule set. So it's a bit hard to kind of explain, but I guess there's some rule sets where I see like maybe there's at least one rule that I think isn't going to be that fun for me, and in those cases I'm probably less tempted to try the puzzle. But if at first glance it looks like all the rules work well together and it might have some cool interactions, then I'm probably going to want to solve it more. apart from that, obviously the rating of the puzzle might influence a bit, and also seeing who created the puzzle. If I solve the puzzle from the same person in the past and I enjoy them, then I'm probably going to be more inclined to attempt puzzles from the same person. Though I try to not be too influenced by that, because it's good also to give a chance to newer setters. But yeah, I'd say these are the main criteria I have usually. And yeah, and also a lot of the time I just want to solve like specific types of puzzles. So I guess in this case it kind of simplifies the decision.
Right. Do you find more enjoyment in solving or setting?
I think the most consistent enjoyment is with solving puzzles, but there's something about setting puzzles that you get this tiny burst of a different level of enjoyment that isn't really possible in solving.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens some kind of at multiple points. It happens when you just found a really cool step in the, that you want to include in the puzzle, or when you after you pose the puzzle and you get some nice feedback. It's also very rewarding. Or if you see someone solve the puzzle and then they find in life the same deduction that you intended there, that's also all of those are kind of hard to beat, and you cannot reproduce, I think, those bursts of high enjoyment with solving that much. And that being said, there's some puzzles I solved that I just really liked a lot.
Yeah.
And it really feels, I mean, so things like, for example, the Randwick family photo. It's a very old puzzle. I think it was created in 2010, but I mean that puzzle is just amazing. Like yeah, it feels like it's another world basically.
Let's do the rapid fire questions before we run out of time here. All right, so answer as quickly as you can, one or the other.
Okay.
High lowity or odd evenity?
High lowity.
Local or global deductions?
Local.
Coloring or good living?
Coloring for sure.
Simple or complex?
Complex.
What's your favorite digit to dance to?
3.
Geometry or arithmetic?
Geometry.
What do you prefer to set in? Penpa, F-Puzzles, Sudoku Maker, or other?
Penpa. There is no question for anything other than Sudoku, really.
Sudoku or pencil puzzles?
Pencil puzzles.
Chaos or order?
Chaos, of course.
Big or little?
Big.
Digital or analog?
Digital.
Cages or lines?
Cages. Absolutely.
Arrows or dots?
Arrows.
Indexers or chess constraints?
Indexers. Yes.
To disambiguate a puzzle, a given or an extra clue?
Extra clue.
Outside or inside
actually,
clues?
sorry.
Yeah, given is kind of a weird thing.
Outside.
Yeah. Cheese or bread?
I choose bread.
Interesting. Good or evil?
Evil.
Lawful or
Especially
chaotic?
puzzles, I guess. Chaotic.
Okay. Well, that's all the rapid fire questions. Good job.
But I think like for the point about extra constraint or extra digit, like if it's a constraint I've already used in the puzzle, then I definitely prefer that. But if the option is between a digit or introducing a new constraint that's never been used before, then I think in that case I will prefer the digit, just because I don't want to add one more rule for no reason.
Yeah, I have written down here given or extra rule, but I just said clue. I just too used to
Oh,
saying
okay.
extra clue. I changed it since last time. Just said it wrong.
Yeah.
Glum Hippo asked a very important question, which I missed until now. What agency do you work for?
So I worked for the North Canadian Puzzle Agency. It's like it's an agency for creating puzzles up here. I think we could recruit you, Meme Wrestler, if you want as well. You have already the correct passport, so just let me know
Right.
if you're interested.
And I guess on that line, where does the nickname Agent come from?
Oh boy. It comes from really far. So yeah, believe it or not, but it actually comes from there's a ghost character in the Mario series. His name is Boo. It's like the small round ghost with the big tongue sticking out.
Oh yeah.
And I when I first like for the first time I joined a website online. Actually, not the first time, but the second time I joined a website online, I chose the nickname, which was it was inspired by Agent 007, but instead of 007, my name became Agent Boo, like B00, like the
Okay.
character in Mario. And then I just removed the Boo so that it becomes, because I wanted to be shorter, so it became just Agent. And that's where it's at now.
Nice. We have a couple more minutes. I'll ask some questions that are a little bit. I don't know if this one's for. If you had to choose only one puzzle type to set forever, what would you choose?
Yeah, I think it will be. Right now, I would say Japanese sums, because you can just do so many things with Japanese sums. We can basically pretty much. Okay, I guess if the question, I mean, okay, I said that assuming that I can add variants to Japanese sums, in which case I can add pretty much anything. But if the question was like a single rule set, then in that case, my answer will be probably Yuban or something of the like, because Yuban is just really rich. You have so many deductions just with the standard rule set, and you can probably create like 20 Ubans, and they will all be kind of different. So yeah, but if you allow for variance, then definitely Japanese sums.
Right. Are there any genres or variants that you'd like to explore but haven't gotten into yet?
Yes, Kakuro. I did a few Kakuro, but there's an idea I had the other day, that what if you take the Kakuro rule set, but you just don't place the clue, and you kind of let the solver place the clues themselves based on, let's say you have them available outside the grid. So it's like, you can think of it as a Japanese sums, but instead of having like, basically it will be like Japanese sums, but you can repeat digits beyond the Kakuro clues in the grid. So I think this might be quite interesting, because you basically have the same type of freedom in terms of the shading of the grid. You can have all kinds of variants with that, but also you can scale up the grid as much as you want, right? So with Japanese sums, if you have 14 by 14 or 15 by 15, then you might run into problems of having no repeats digits and somehow fitting the correct number of shaded cells in each row and column. But if you allow for repeated digits beyond the shaded cells, then there's no restriction on that. You can basically have a 25 by 25 and it's still going to work just fine. So I think it might be fun to explore it a bit, at least.
Interesting. And last question, would you set puzzles even if no one would solve them? Like last person on Earth, would you still solve puzzles?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I would try to find food in that case. But
Yeah, probably.
yeah.
The priorities might shift then.
Priorities might change a bit in that case.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Agent. This has been a wonderful 2 hours. As David says, yeah, a great way to start off the first episode of the 3rd season. I almost said the 1st season. Wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me here. It was a lot of fun. And thanks everyone for coming along, and for commenting in chat, for asking these questions. It's really honored to have the opportunity to speak about puzzles for 2 hours. A lot of fun.
I'm really happy to have you on, and don't forget to use your votes, guys, or if you want to see more interviews, because currently we only have 4 people in the interviews. So if you want to see more interviews, then donate or up your Patreon to get more votes to vote for Doomed Out with Syria and all these lovely people on the screen so that we can get more interviews. As for, I think someone asked a little while ago if we're going to do more puzzle competitions for getting more votes. I don't think so. I might do like one for like 2 votes or something, but right now there's like an oversaturation of votes and they're not being used. So I don't want to like throw in extra votes because then we might have too many votes for the number of people, which would be bad, of course. Who is next? That is an excellent question. I forgot we had to figure that out. Yeah, well, I'm a little bit busy in March, but I'm planning to have at least one interview at the beginning of March, which is probably going to be Maexo. And I don't think I have time at the end of February, so I'm gonna say the next one is Maexo. So sorry, I should have let Agent announce that, but I wasn't sure.
I didn't know, so.
Yeah, you didn't know, so I wasn't sure. Thanks for the reminder, David, to remind me to do that, as per tradition. All right. Thank you so much, Agent. It was a pleasure, and thank you everyone
Likewise.
for coming out. Like the stream, like the video afterwards. I haven't actually looked at the number of likes. 26. Okay, that's pretty normal. Yeah, so that more people can see this interview because it was great. So, yeah, have a good day, everyone, and bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.